Hi again. So in this video what I wanted to cover was I guess four topics. One is what is 3D printing and just kind of explain how the 3D printer works, which will give a little bit of insight into some of the limitations of what you can produce from it. So I'll cover that, and then the big thing for me was what I wanted to find out. Is it ready for mainstream use? In other words, is it something that your typical hobbyist can buy and use to produce things they need for their hobbies, or just fun stuff? Or is it still in the mode of it takes a lot of tweaking and it's something you just constantly have to fiddle with to get decent prints out of, which was one of the big questions I had in purchasing it. And then I'm just going to cover what some of my upcoming projects are and what are some of the videos you can watch out for coming in the future. And then lastly, just why I'm doing these videos, in case anybody cares. I just thought I'd throw a little bit on the end about that. And so, first part, what is a 3D printer and how does it work? So the first component of the printer is the actual printing material, which is called filament. This can be many different substances. I'll cover a bit of those later, but it comes on spools, which is then fed down through what's called a Bowden tube and goes to the actual print head. So you can see me in the video here, basically fumbling with trying to get it into that tube. But what it does is it goes between two wheels you can see in front of my left hand, and one of them has teeth on it, which feeds it through that tube I'm pointing to. And that'll then take it down to the actual print head. The print head, for lack of a better way to describe it, is almost just like a heated steel funnel. They do come in different diameters. The standard one that came with this printer is 0.4 millimeters. And so what it does is it melts the filament and feeds it out or extrudes it into that thin stream, which is then laid down to actually create the print. So the rest is really just moving that extruder head around in the three dimensions to lay the melted filament down and create whatever 3D model you're trying to make. So next topic, is it ready for mainstream use? And I guess in that respect, I think it is. My big thing with it was I didn't want to buy something and have something that every time I wanted to do a specific task or print something, it took a lot of messing around with to get it to the point where you could actually print. And I don't think that is the case. From the point that I started the assembly to the point I printed the first model that I printed with it, it was probably less than 3 hours, which would be fairly common with any new tool you buy to do something. And so there wasn't a lot of uncertainty with doing it. It pretty much assembled it, leveled the bed, and printed something. Since that point, I've printed numerous other things, and with the exception of what was probably my own fault with one failure, everything has come out reasonably well. I mean, it's not going to print super fine detail without some tweaks and without doing some things. But if you just want to print basic things like a little case to hold a little computer, or the stamp, a stamp for doing some leatherworking, which is exactly one of the main reasons I bought it, then yeah, it's ready to do that. And you can pretty much do that right out of the box after just assembling. So I'm pretty happy with the purchase. I guess the other component of being ready for mainstream use would be the pricing. And so when I initially started looking at them and researching what were some good models, the one I was coming up with as being one of the most recommended was around £500. And that's a bit pricey for just some hobby use. Um, and the more I looked at it, the more I started thinking about the projects I wanted to do. I kind of got a bit single-minded on it, and potentially, I was actually considering it at that point. Even to the point where I mentioned it to my wife, and the fact I didn't come out of that with a instant concussion is actually some indicator of her understanding and temperance. Um, but that was just, it was too much to bite off for just something I was going to use for some fun and some hobbies and making some gifts. But then as I kept looking and came across the Creality Ender 3, it was less than 200 pounds. It was actually around 159 pounds. It was less than 200 US dollars. So that brought it much more into the hobbyist use. And so I think at that price point, with the level of dependability it's showing, I think yes. I think the answer would be it is ready for mainstream use. So two other components I could see being considered on whether it's ready for mainstream use or not that I actually had a hard time finding anything about when I originally was researching it were the cost of printing, or the actual cost of the material for printing, and then also if there was any actual like smell or anything that came from it. What I didn't want is something that smelled like burning plastic while it was printing. Um, Now, as I mentioned earlier, there's several different materials to print with, or a lot of different materials to print with. The one I've been using, and the most commonly used one, is called PLA. I don't know what that acronym sounds for. I guess I could have looked it up, but that is the most commonly used one. It's got a very low melting point, so it's a very easy material to work with for printing. It's relatively durable. The one interesting thing about it is evidently biodegradable. It takes a long time, but it will eventually break down, um, which I guess makes it not good to be used outside, which is another experiment I want to try as part of a project. But it doesn't put off any smell, or at least that I can pick up while it's printing, which is a good thing. Some of the materials, there is a material that's used called, well, ABS plastic. That actually does evidently put off not only a smell, but toxic fumes while it's printing. So in order to print that, again, I'm going from what I've seen thus far, but everything is recommended having an exhaust fan or a well-ventilated area while printing that. There's a lot of other materials. I haven't looked into them yet to see what's involved with those. I think the PLA will probably take me quite a ways because it does everything I need to do thus far. The cost has not been that high. A spool of the PLA material costs around 20 pounds, give or take, depending on where you find it at. I don't really have an indicator of how long that'll last. When you use the slicing software to create the printable model, it does give you an estimate on the amount of material it's going to use. But to be honest, I've been printing for quite a while and haven't used much of the spool that I started with. Um, the other thing is, though, you will accumulate probably many different spools because it does come in different colors. Like I've got a blue one on there now, I've been using a black one, and then I also bought a white one to do some stuff with. But again, I can see that probably lasting a long time. One tip with it is they do say to store it in plastic with these silica packs to keep moisture, because it does absorb moisture and it will cause it to stick on the spool. Now the question is how, and part of the reason for making these videos is how to get that known to people outside of, again, just the people that are buying it to do some very specific things or just have an interest in tinkering. And so that was part of the point of these videos, and what leads me on to the next subject, which was what are some of the projects I want to do with it. And so for upcoming projects, one of the main reasons for buying it was to do some leatherworking activities, which means creating custom stamps, whether it's letters or design. And so that'll be one project that I'll be documenting, is how to actually start from nothing, create an actual template for a stamp, and then actually print the stamp, and then actually create some leatherworking items from that. So that'll be one project. Another one is one that I actually worked on today, which I'm pretty excited about because it came out pretty well, is taking just a physical object and creating a model out of that and then creating a 3D print from that. So that'll be another one coming, and then one that I had never really put a lot of thought into previously, but actually as I was looking at the 3D prints and looking at various things people had done, the whole concept of drones. I've never really shown much interest before because it's, again, an expensive item and seemed like something I would use a few times and not use anymore. But the thought of actually building one from scratch and printing most of the major frame components got me a bit interested in just trying it again. So that is probably a little bit longer term project, but one that I do want to try in the future. And again, document the whole process and just see how it goes. And so then the last subject, why am I doing these videos? There's a couple reasons. One is, and this is kind of a humorous reason, but I am really bad at documenting things. And doing some stuff with the 3D printing, doing some stuff with actually creating my own models, it was going to be very important to document it because it's not going to be something I'm going to be doing constantly. I do have a day job, or actually what you consider more of a day job considering the time I spend on it. And so this is going to be something I'm going to work on and do when I have time. But it could be an extended period of time till I come back to do it again. And I'm really bad at documenting how to actually, or how I actually specifically got to an endpoint. So these videos is partially to force me to document that process. But the other reason is a lot of what I'm going to try and be doing with this involves using pieces of software I don't normally use, and a lot of people don't normally use, using devices I don't normally use. And whenever I look on the internet on how to do things, you find a lot of videos. There's a ton of information on the internet. But what you tend to find is a ton of information that either moves very quickly and misses steps, or at a very high level, or goes very deep in depth, but then doesn't quite go down the track that I'm looking to do, and or goes too deep when it's trying to teach me things I don't need to do. And so my big thing is I want to know the steps I need to do the specific task I'm trying. And that was kind of where I came up with the title of the video channel, was just tell me what I need to do for the very specific thing I want to do. So, as always, if you did watch to this point, thanks for watching. If you do have different topics or different things you want me to cover for projects of interest, feel free to leave comments and let me know. Thank you, and have fun.